that kind of gets us to praise the pucks question. If you had to guess any players on the roster that aren't unrestricted free agents that won't be here next year, who would it be?
Yeah, I mean, Atkinson is the obvious answer, to be sure.
Atkinson, I think, is the most obvious.
Also, I feel like, getting to your point about game 82 must win, Morgan Frost is benched for half the game. Like, it still seems like, even though he had what I think was a pretty good year, John Tortorella still doesn't trust him and still doesn't like him as a player. So I could see him being a piece in a hockey trade.
Oh, in a hockey trade, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think especially if they end up trading for a center.
Yeah.
He would, I would assume, be part of it just because he's on a cheap deal. Presumably the team who's trading away the center is trading away a guy who is more expensive. So this allows them to fill that gap with a much cheaper player who is very clearly at least a solid NHLer.
Yeah.
Morgan Frost is, I believe. I think we all can agree that he's established himself as a perfectly fine NHL player.
Absolutely.
I think that would make sense. I, however, do not think that game 82 means that the Flyers are out again on Morgan Frost.
I don't know that the Flyers are. I think John Tortorella is out on.
I think Morgan Frost might go, I'm fucking out on this.
Yeah.
I
had
wouldn't
enough
blame
of your
him.
bullshit.
He'll be.
I see the thing with Morgan Frost though is, and this really, like, maybe this is partially by design, but I also think they also may have kind of like stumbled ass backwards into it. I think there are a lot of players on this team that if the guys didn't love each other so much, they would want out. Like, Morgan Frost has every reason to be like, I am sick of this friggin' coach.
Yeah.
But he is so tight with everybody on the team that, like, he might not like playing for Torts, but he loves playing with the guys.
Yeah.
Morgan Frost, and just like as a valuable asset, 'cause I know a lot of people out there like, oh, it's going to be a hockey trade. What the hell are we going to get back for Morgan Frost? And maybe you're underrating him. Maybe you're properly rating him. I will say, though, he turns 25 in about a month, and he signed for one more year at $2.1 million, and he's still under team control after that. He's got another year of restricted free agency. It's like, just as a valuable asset, it's like, hey, here's a cheap guy who can give us at least 40 points, and he's ours. Like, we're not going to have to give him $7 million anytime soon. Like, I could see him fetching a decent return. Not anything crazy, but the pick for something like could get
not
you.
Like a 1-for-1 thing. Like, I could see him being part of a package.
Part of a package.
Yeah.
Another guy
I don't expect him traded.
Another guy who I think, and again, like, I personally do not want him traded, but I do think that the post All-Star break performance and results of Joel Farabee make him a more palatable potential trade option in a hockey trade. Because again, if you're going to make a hockey trade for a potential impact player in his prime, you're going to have to give up stuff of value.
Yeah. You can't just be our trash.
Let me put it this way. Like, during the year, my guy who I had in my head of like who they might move would be like a Cam York, because you know, they got guys like Emil Andre coming who play the left side. They have Oliver Bonk. Like, maybe York is the guy who ultimately is expendable. I think after the way he played in the second half, I do not think they will view him as expendable. I think they view him as a core piece. Yeah. Whereas while Cam York stepped up at the end of the season, Joel Farabee stepped back.
He sure did.
And suddenly maybe he's the guy where if you're talking about adding a big piece, maybe he's the guy where you don't want to move him, but suddenly it feels more acceptable in your head to move him because maybe he's not as good as you thought he was in January.
I think it's likely Lawton and Risto are going.
Okay. All right.
Risto, like, if we ever get, I mean, no one's going to trade for a dude who's like, yeah, he's on Ellis Island.
Right.
Like, if there's ever any clarity about his injury and how healthy he is, like, that's a big caveat there.
Yeah.
But I just think at this point now, I love Scott Lawton. At this point now, we have Ryan Poehling. We have Garnett. Yeah. How many of these dudes can you have? We need roster spots for young players, even if, like, maybe they're not blue chip prospects, like young guys who might ultimately be better than Scott Lawton.
Right.
The only way to find out think about how long it took Scott Lawton to break out. We need to give guys that opportunity that he got if we're going to turn them into the next Scott Lawton.
You're right.
I need to see some dramatic change here. Listen, Yeah, I think the team took steps. I think this culture is probably strong, as Charlie's saying. The guys all love each other. Garnett Hathaway's saying how solid it is, like how solid his teammates are. And that's all well and good. Fact of the matter is they've missed the playoffs for 4 years in a row, and they fell apart down the stretch.
I think that, to me, is the big thing, is that I am not of the belief that all this culture stuff is bullshit and it's irrelevant and it's an invented fiction by the Flyers meant to pull the wool over our eyes about how bad of a team they are. I do not think any of that is true. What I do think, though, and I said this on a couple shows, what I do think is that this 8-game losing streak at the end of the year showed you that the culture thing isn't a cure-all.
It's not enough, yeah.
I do believe they have a strong culture. I also believe that if culture was as strong as they, not their culture, but just culture in general, if culture was as important as they have claimed it is, they wouldn't have choked this playoff spot away.
Yeah. I think the culture thing is like the base that you build on.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
I just it's a lot like captains. You know, it's a good culture. Winning team.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you know where the culture sucks? Ottawa,
Losers.
Buffalo. Like teams where you're perpetual losers.
It's a chicken and egg thing, to be sure. Because it's like, are you good because your culture is good, or is the culture good because you're good? There are good teams with shit culture.
Yeah.
To be sure.
There are teams with good players that have shit culture.
Yes.
And I guess that's the argument against like Buffalo or Ottawa.
Yes.
Like they should be better, regardless if you think they're cup contenders or not. They should be better than missing the playoffs by the amount they're missing the playoffs by. You know, and that's the reason I guess the Flyers are doing it the way they're doing. I don't hate I just think how strong is the culture if every guy on the roster has to be a culture guy?
Yeah.
Like it can't take losing a Scott Lawton. I don't know, man. Like I think that's a change that could not even be addition by subtraction, but just be good for the growth of the group.
Maybe.
Someone else step up now. Yeah. Scott Lawton was one of your leaders. Someone else take the reins.
We all see